Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wealthy Idiot Show. My name's AJ, and today I'm going to talk about what shifted my mindset when it came to finances. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and why I moved away from what Dave Ramsey teaches to something a little more aggressive. Not too aggressive, I still prefer to be conservative. At the time I started this process, I had one child. Now I have a wife and 4 kids, so I've got to make sure that they're taken care of. So I'm not trying to, gamble away all the assets I have in order to be successful. I want to be very methodical, conservative, and find ways to improve my financial future and the safety of my family. So let's get into it. So my story in my financial journey started back right after I got out of the Marine Corps. So I got out of the Marine Corps, went to college, and at the time I was working in retail while going to college. My family was kind enough to support us, so they gave us a place to stay, me and my daughter, and I was able to move through college and finish that off. And at the time, I thought all I really was trying to do, and I thought all I needed to be successful was graduate, then find a job that could afford to survive in the Bay Area, which is, a lot to ask. I mean, I couldn't go get roommates because of my daughter, so I was kind of stuck in having to actually get my own apartment for myself and for her, and then being able to feed us and pay all the bills. And so it's a pretty tall order to be able to afford that here. So I knew I needed to get that job to make that happen. In the meantime, I was watching a lot of Dave Ramsey.
You got to get out of debt and stay out of debt. Now, everybody knows Dave Ramsey's going to say that.
And I didn't have debt. I was very intentional about my money. We stayed on budgets. This is all while I was in school, just working in retail, and also invested. So, put a good chunk down, probably a little more than 15%, 401k, plus, side investments, post-tax investments, and was doing pretty well. Didn't really think too much of it, wasn't making that much money, but I thought that's the way to do it. That's how you're supposed to do things. Fast forward, and I go out and I get a job, and the job pays pretty well. I can now afford an apartment, I can afford food, we can invest more now. Instead of, just the 15 to 20%, we upped it to like 30%, and we were sitting pretty happy. And then if you haven't heard about it before, there's something in the tech industry called imposter syndrome. And any kind of really high level job has this thing called imposter syndrome. And what that means is that you're working in your job and you start to feel like you don't know enough, that other people know more than you, and you're just kind of chugging along, kind of faking it, I guess, until someone discovers you. And then once they discover you don't know what you're doing, they're going to come in at any moment and lay you off, fire you, and get rid of you.
You're fired.
Everyone has that a little bit in the tech industry, and then right at the beginning, I had it quite a bit. So that first year, I was working nonstop. My brain thought, I have to keep this job, otherwise my whole established life that we just created comes tumbling down. And so I worked like crazy that first year, and my boss sat me down and he was like, look, you're doing a good job. So I'm like, oh, thank God. That was rough. I mean, I didn't know how I was doing. I mean, generally I had an idea that stuff was working okay, but like you just don't know, and you constantly have this fear that you're going to get discovered and people are going to find out you don't really know what you're doing. So that was very stressful, and I thought I have to maintain this job. Well, once that year was over and I sat back and relaxed a little bit, I discovered that Dave Ramsey method suggests that debt is the greatest thing to fear.
You got to get out of debt and stay out of debt.
Get rid of all that debt, because then life becomes more secure. And it occurred to me that if I lost my job in that moment, at any point during that year, if I lost my job, despite the fact that I had no debt, I was in trouble. Like, I had enough to live on for a while, but if I couldn't get another job that paid that amount of money, there was nothing I could do. I would be stuck. We would be in a place where I would run out of money and we'd have to figure out where to live and where to go. Well, that's more true today than it was back then, because now I have a larger family with a larger house and more responsibilities. I started to get fearful of being dependent on a single source of income as opposed to being debt-free. Now, I was still debt-free at the time, but the fear became that single source of income that I was worried if I lost, everything would come crumbling down. So my set shifted into, how do I remove this single source of income? How do I shift my assets in a way to become more financially independent? And I've talked about financial independence on this channel and why it's so important. But really, in this case, it was just, how do I find a way to support my family if my job ever did disappear, and how long would it take me to get there? How long would I have to fight to get there? Well, once I started thinking that way and started figuring out different methods of trying to produce income, one of them being real estate, and I keep pointing this out, I took out debt to get this real estate, and I'm making good cash flow and appreciation on these houses. It's a second source of income for my family, and now we're working on the third, fourth, fifth source of income in order to ensure that we have a lot of flow in case one of those things stops working. It's like diversifying your income. Once I started thinking in that way, I started looking at money a little bit different. So I dramatically reduced our spending. We got a lot more frugal and figured out ways to save money as best I could. I've made a video about the different things that I did in order to reduce our spending. We looked through insurance companies to find cheaper ones. We shopped for food and found better ways to eat. We found better ways to eat out because that wasn't something we were willing to cut. We found cheaper means for coffee. We did everything we could to try and shave bills as much as possible and be as inexpensive as we could, so we could take that extra money and invest it so that we could reduce the amount of time it would take us to become financially independent. As of right now, I'm probably somewhere, depending on how the market goes, because the market's a little wonky at the moment, I'm probably about 3 to 4 years away from financial independence. What that means is, in 3 to 4 years, my investments could support my entire life, plus continue to grow my assets, even if we're taking from them. And so Dave Ramsey talks about how comfortable it must feel if you don't have a mortgage, you don't have any debt, and then you can then start investing, and there's a freedom to that. And that's true. But until you can get to the point where those investments at retirement, that 15% you're investing at retirement starts being able to support your family, you're still in a place where if you lost your job, you're scrambling to try and figure it out. And if you can't find a job that pays that same amount of money, like, you're going to start withdrawing from your retirement, and you're going to have to work so much longer. The goal here, and what Dave Ramsey is getting at, is that you want independence. You want to be able to take care of yourself without other sources, and that's what you should be fighting for. And he says you should have no debt, and that's what gets you there. And I think that's wrong. There's a little bit of debt that you can take out, especially in terms of real estate investing, to be able to produce that cash flow, to build those assets, to get you to a place where you can be financially independent, not at 65, but at like 40. So then that way, as you're working after that age, you're growing these assets to a point where you're secure for the rest of your life, and all that weight is lifted off your shoulder infinitely earlier than what Dave's proposing. So in summary, thanks for watching today. I really appreciate it. I'm just trying to project my ideas so that you can maybe get a little bit of a mindset shift on how you can improve your financial future. You could start looking at financial independence a little bit differently, and then maybe improve the outlook of yourself and your family for the future. Now, before you go, please make sure you like and subscribe. Check out wealthyidiots.com. I super appreciate everybody watching. I hope this is educational, and I'll see you guys next time.